This is the Omni Analytics Group Operations Optimization application. What this is sort of a front end to a linear programming solver. And for those of you who aren't as familiar with linear programming, it's essentially this class of mathematical optimization problems that are sort of in a particular framework where there's an objective function with which we wish to optimize, and that could be either maximizing or minimizing the objective function. And then we're subjecting ourselves to several constraints depending on the variables we have. And this actually tends to fit a lot of common business problems. So for instance, you might be wishing to optimize your profit subject to your inventory constraints. And this application helps you sort of solve that. So let's just kind of take a look. At the beginning here, we sort of have a welcome paragraph, the video tutorial that you're watching. And then we actually have a set of examples, and I'm going to come back to that. By default, we say none, and we allow the user to sort of define the parameters and the configuration for their linear programming problem. And so I just want to briefly show how that's done. Down here, we can select the number of variables. I could change 2 to 4. You'll see automatically now we have x1, x2, x3, and x4 in both our objective function and in our constraints. I can also change the number of constraints. So right now we have 3 constraints. Maybe I want 5. Maybe I decide I only want 2. And then I can choose whether it's a minimization or a maximization problem. At that point, it's all just about filling out your objective function. So defining the numbers, defining the order of the inequalities for the constraints, and filling out the constraints. And then you just click solve and the solution pops up down at the bottom. Now, if you're first kind of just experimenting with this app, it's probably quite a bit easier to actually try out one of the examples. I happen to like this marketing channel selection example. So what happens here is it gives you a little bit of text, and essentially the goal here is to fund 4 marketing campaigns, so a TV ad campaign, SEO, AdWords, and Facebook. And there's a defined return on investment for each of those campaigns, which ultimately ends up being the objective function that we wish to optimize, the return on investment. However, there's a set of constraints. So one such constraint is the total budget is in $1 million, and spending between SEO and AdWords must exceed 60% of the total budget. So there's all these constraints, and what we've done is we've sort of transcribed both the objective function and the constraints automatically for you into this framework. So we can kind of just run this example and see. And if we click solve, you get our answer. Essentially, this defines exactly how we should allocate the dollars that we have to each of the 4 marketing campaigns in order to produce the optimal return on investment. Below the solution, there's kind of the, debugging information and the internal information for how some of this was solved. That's given by the LP solve package in R, and it's available for viewing down at the bottom. But the ultimate solution comes up right here. And once again, there's a couple other examples. When you switch to the examples, this crop one's a little bit simpler. It'll automatically update the constraints and the variables, and you can click solve and immediately get your answer as far as the different linear optimization problems that are available to you. So that's the operations optimization application, and that's pretty much all there is to it. And we would like, if there's any other interesting examples that are worth adding, we would love to get in contact with you to add those to the application.